It's great to see some familiar faces. I see faces from all over the country. This is great. East Coast, West Coast, middle. Um, we may actually have someone joining us from Jordan. I don't know though. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Jordan, but I've had the new director, the acting director of the Department of Antiquities, Mr. Ahmed Ashami, at least sign up, and he wants to come. We'll see. And if he comes, I'll give a shout out.
Well enough.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Terrific. Okay, so I think we will begin. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and it's just great to see some familiar faces, some with long-standing interest in archaeology, some with a kind of an armchair approach to archaeology, others maybe wishing they had done more archaeology. In any case, welcome to all of you. It is a privilege for the Center for Near Eastern Archaeology to sponsor this event, something we do every year. However, it's different this year. Last year was similar, although it was entirely canceled. This year, it's entirely online. So we actually are missing some components. We're missing the genuine Bedouin tent and the hospitality that we enjoy in that tent. We're missing the in-person visits to exhibits on campus, but we are very happy that we can expand our audience this way and include people from around the country and I assume around the world before the program is over. So that is a plus for us. We will probably try to find ways to benefit from the best of both worlds in the future, online and on site. I want to welcome especially alumni of La Sierra University. This is for you that we do this primarily. We've invited lots of other guests as well, but honors to you and to you who have graduated from La Sierra. A couple of notes about Zoom. I suspect that many of us are so Zoom friendly that we are not Zoom friendly anymore. Zoom has become a curse for some of us, but at the same time, it really does provide us a platform to talk to each other, to be in conversation, to share ideas that we didn't have before, certainly globally. Those of you who are not acquainted with Zoom, just a couple of things to keep in mind. I will keep you muted if you don't mind. That will reduce noise and background noise, but keep your cameras on, and especially when we come to Q&A after the major presentation, we will want to see you if you have a question. There are a couple of ways to ask questions. One is to use the chat box. You can use that anytime. You can send to all. You can send to one person. So the chat box is very flexible. Dawn Acevedo, the curatorial assistant here at the Center for Near Eastern Archaeology, will be monitoring that. She will also be monitoring after the presentation the hand raise or raise hand function. And it's when at that point that we would then ask you, once we indicate who has raised hand, to unmute yourself so that you can ask the question live. We would look forward to that. That will make this interaction even more lively, so we appreciate that. Let me see if there's anything else. There will be some information. There's already something in the chat room, and I think Don will be posting a couple of things that will be helpful. So be sure to keep tabs of that. If you have any questions, put them into the chat, and Don will monitor that and we'll be able to respond. We do want, during discussion, to keep our comments focused and brief in order to make the best use of our time. Something about how we plan the afternoon to go. Following the major presentation, which I will introduce momentarily, Dawn Acevedo will provide a short PowerPoint on some recent initiatives of the center. So we're looking forward to that, keeping up to date with what we are doing. And then following that, I will I have the privilege of giving out awards. It's always fun to do, and particularly pleased this year with the awardees. We actually have one that I can see awardee from a previous occasion. I'll come back to that in a minute. But in any case, that is how we would like the afternoon to flow. So with that in mind, let me introduce our two presenters, our co-presenters for the presentation, the major presentation for this afternoon. Teresa Terry, we call her, Shaw, Doctor of Jurisprudence from Whittier College School of Law, practiced law for 24 years in Claremont, California, but retirement bought her time to volunteer at the center's collection lab, where she has passionately pursued artifact research. While she enjoys exploring background history and context for the hundreds of artifacts she encountered at the center and in our lab, it was the 1,100 coins in the collection that really motivated Terry to learn more about them. She has provided consultation on coin publications and has become our local numismatic expert. Joining her is Dr. Kent Bramlett, earned his PhD in Near Eastern archaeology at the University of Toronto. He is professor of archaeology and the history of antiquity at La Sierra University and chairs the Department of Biblical Studies and Archaeology in the HMS Richards Divinity School. Dr. Bramlett has excavated in Jordan and Turkey and maybe somewhere else. Kent, you'll have to catch us up on that. He brings to his classes a breadth and depth informed well by world travel and nearly 3 decades of archaeological field research. One of the courses he teaches here in both graduate and undergraduate formats is New Testament archaeology, or archaeology of the New Testament world, a time period uniquely well adapted to the topic of today's presentation. The title of the presentation, Shifting Images on Ancient Coins, from Roman pagan to Byzantine Christian. We've always been told to follow the money. So Terry and Kent, take us there.
Are we ready? Hello, everybody. In this talk, I chose a couple of coins that kind of illustrate what the journey was. And we'll see it in closer detail. But the 2 coins here represent Constantine in the upper left, and what is that? Heraclius in the lower right. And you see that we have changes from where the emperor is looking, either to the side, but it became to the front. And then what to me is very interesting is the image that held over from all of the Roman images and was on coins for the longest time, and that's the image of victory. Before I start, I wanted to give you a sense of, we didn't decide how we were going to get to the YouTube. Or let's see if we can do this. There's a short YouTube video that shows something about how ancient coins were made. And I think it's good to have a sense of that, because they were not mass produced. They were not stamped out. Each one was made by hand. So these are the blanks that were made. And here's an anvil that is holding the die that has what we have since then called the face of the coin, the head of the coin. And then another die placed on it with the tail side. And they're struck by hand and then removed. And you can imagine that sometimes the blanks weren't quite large enough. You can turn it off now. Sometimes the blanks weren't quite large enough, um, or one side was perfectly square on and the other side was a little bit off. So that's what makes every coin an individual. Um, they were made, coins were made from gold and silver and either copper or bronze being an alloy of copper. And I wanted you to see the size of the coins. And I've tried to make this about to scale. You know what a $50 looks like, and that's about the size of a $50. And although this is tiny, I'm going to hold this up. And it's about this size. And then the smallest one is the size of a dime. Later on in the slides, I'll show you, talk some more about a reform of the currency, but at that point in time, this group of gold coins was made, and you can see how their sizes relate to the bronze one. Oops, why is this not working? Okay, here we are. So what we're talking about today, if when you follow, when was the first official recognition of Christianity among the emperors? That is the Emperor Constantine. And follow it to the point in time when there were no pagan images on the coins in the reign of Heraclius. Nope, I got that wrong. It's Heraclius. It was a 300-year process, and there's a little bit of a timeline here. And you see in boldface the three emperors that Kent is going to talk about. Changes in the coins didn't always coincide with the importance of the emperor. Sometimes they did. So there are places where we'll match and places where we won't. As an introduction, this is some information about the format of Roman coins up to the time of Constantine. The obverse, which is the head side, always had a portrait of the emperor. And you can see these are pretty good portraits. Not all of them are. Some of the men who engraved the dies were better at it than others. But by and large, you get a pretty good sense of what they looked like. And another convention is that they wore on their heads a symbol of their royalty, which was a laurel wreath. And that's pretty steady from the beginning of the Roman Empire up to the time of Constantine. There's another crown that is seen, and you see it in the lower part. It's called a radiate crown. It represents the sun god. Sun god being, interestingly enough, a kind of the beginning of a monotheistic idea within Roman religion. And the sun god, Sol Invictus, was a favorite of the soldiers, the army people. And since many of the emperors came out of the military, they were exposed to that. On the reverse of a typical Roman coin, there were images of the deities. There were images of the personification of virtues, as you see in the middle greenish coin. That's the deity called Monea, and she's holding the scales. Other symbols that appear are a scepter, a throne, the eagle or the lion, both of which were associated with royalty, a globe, watch for that, and a wreath. Also, there were religious images, and I chose this coin because it has a combination. Some of these religious tools, I guess we could call them, or appear on some of the Roman coins that were used in Judea during the Roman occupation. So they come up again. The most important of the personifications was victory. And here you see a statue of Jupiter holding her. There's a comparable statue that was done in the 3rd century BC by the Greeks. So it was a very well entrenched image. Victory was important in that she rewarded competitive achievement. And that's her role on the coins, is to represent the success of the Romans. And you'll see that we have in this statue a throne, a scepter, a globe, and a wreath. Now we're going to start talking to the way the coins changed, and we begin with Constantine.
All right. Well, most people are familiar with the name of Constantine. If you've heard of Julius Caesar and Augustus, chances are you at least know that Constantine was important because it was because of him that Christianity became legalized in the Roman Empire. So I want to add a few other elements that are interesting about his time. And let's just note again the basic chronology. So this is in the early 4th century, the 300s AD. And it all begins with, I guess it's his ambition really. In the preceding decade or so, Diocletian had created this new order of governance in the Roman Empire where you had a couple of emperors and then sort of the subset of Caesars for each. So there's like 4, a system that was supposed to stabilize the empire after that dreadful 3rd century where the barbarians had been coming in and the empire just about collapsed. But Constantine wasn't satisfied with that, and he went to battle against Maxentius and became then the sole emperor really of the West. A very politically dicey situation. And in his battle, the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, it was later written about how he said, fight in this, under the symbol, and we'll come back to what that was in just a minute. The next year, he issues, along with the Eastern Emperor Licinius, the Edict of Milan, which decriminalized Christianity. Now, Christianity had faced this great persecution in the preceding decade under Diocletian. No longer were Christians being actively persecuted, but wow, to decriminalize it, make it one of the legal religions of the empire was transformative. So that was very important. And then if we follow him down just a little bit later, it's in the 320s, 324, when he defeated then his rival in the east, Licinius. And at that point, then he founds Constantinople and builds that as his major capital of the empire, becoming, of course, Istanbul in modern times. It was only in 337 that he was baptized on his deathbed. And so let's talk about a couple of things here. One was, why on earth wasn't he baptized when he became a Christian? Or did he become a Christian earlier? And this is debated by historians. Many have suggested it was strictly a political move on his to garner new support for his civil war, his battles. And that may be. Perhaps the idea grew on him, or maybe he was sincere. There is that text in Hebrews 6, verses 4 through 6 of chapter 6, about if one falls away from the faith, can he be brought back again? Can he be forgiven? This gave early Christians quite a bit of pause for thought, and some chose not to be baptized until the end of their life, lest they make some major mistakes later on. At any rate, what he did, of course, was still transformative, regardless of why he did it. But that symbol, his official historian Eusebius, who wrote church history, and then later a life of Constantine, in his initial description of that sort of that portent in the heavens, describes it as a cross above the sun, this fiery flaming cross with a tag on it that read, it's given in Greek, but fight in this under this sign. However, There is some question that indeed it was the Chi-Rho symbol, and you can see here in this painting by Rubens that it's the Chi-Rho he sees in the sky. He did have a dream later on, and we have all sorts of different accounts. The symbol here on the left fits very well the description that Eusebius says he was given for the standards that Constantine used. Later in his life, he was actually showing a standard that he fought under. And it has a wreath, and inside the wreath, it has the Chi-Rho. So the first two letters of the name of Christ, Chi and a Rho. It's called?
The symbol is called a Christogram.
A Christogram, right? Yes, I call it Chi-Rho, but yeah, the Christogram is the more official name.
Can I insert?
Please, jump right in. Use the pointer.
Since this is such a nice big picture, take a closer look at the Chi-Rho, because it's going to come back again, and you're going to see it in a couple of guises. Sometimes it will have the X with it for Christos, and then here, the R, or what looks like a P, is a Greek R, stands for rho, and the symbol as it appears on some of the later coins, we lose the X, but the rho remains. And sometimes it's facing the right way, and sometimes it's facing the other way. But that's what it's meant to refer to. It's meant to refer to this symbol and the Christ.
Well, Constantine began building churches. And of course, previous to his reign, there were no large churches, almost none, because of course it wasn't a legal congregation religion to meet together. So you had house churches, you had maybe some small converted churches, which were still a very micro scale. Constantine chose then as the style of architecture, we find this in archaeology all across the Christendom of this time, the Roman Empire, the basilica plan. So this was really just a Roman administrative type of structure, a floor plan where tribunals could meet, equivalent really to the Stoa of the Greek eastern part of the empire. And it even often sometimes had an apse where the tribunal could meet, and this became very characteristic of Christian churches. So now if archaeologists dig and they find this semicircular a line of cut stone blocks, right away you think church, we found a church. But Constantine was responsible then for building St. Peter's, the first version of it in Rome until the Renaissance, they tore it down. The Hagia Irene in Constantinople. And then, of course, those very important churches in the Holy Land that his mother, Queen Helena, helped establish: the place of Jesus' birth, Bethlehem, the place of his crucifixion, death, and resurrection in Jerusalem, and then one on the Mount of Olives commemorating the Ascension and actually part of the mysteries that Jesus taught his disciples in Matthew 24. Those two events were put together. But Constantine then is responsible for setting the plan of Christian churches, which we see for the next 1800 years then throughout up to present times. What about Constantine's coins?
What about Constantine's coins? Well, this illustrates a couple of other things. First of all, I've shown you two pictures of the head side of Constantine coins, and you can see that depending on the skill of the engraver, you have either a pretty good likeness or somebody who could be any number of people on the right side. But you'll see that the pattern is there. He's facing right, and he's wearing laurel leaves. But a couple of new images snuck in during his time, and he introduced, and these are going to be seen from now on in various guises. In the lower left, you see him wearing a crested helmet. It's a helmet that has feathers or something else, some kind of brushy thing sticking up from it. The next time you see it, the person wearing it is going to be facing forward instead of to the side in this picture. The next two show what are called a diadem that circles the head, and they're made out of the center one is made out of pearls. The next one is made out of precious jewels and pearls. And this is a design that continues on coins. Oh, wait a minute. Not yet. Another slide from now, we'll see it. Continues on coins well into the future. Additionally, this is how we see the images on Constantine's coins change. He does start to limit the kinds of pagan deities or images that are shown, and the ones that remain are of some patron gods. Over here on the right, you see the sun god, Sol Invictus. But what has sneaked in, and the story is that it's people who work in the mint who are Christians. And they snuck in some religious symbols as part of the kind of symbols that they put on coins in order to help them track the coins out of the particular workshop in a particular mint. Over on the left side, you see Jupiter, and Jupiter with all kinds of other symbols that are very familiar. You see him holding victory on a globe, victory holding a wreath. Down at his feet is an eagle holding a wreath. So all of these are ways of projecting the military might and the power of Rome. The next phase of his coins feature different kinds of people, I guess I'll say. The Roman pagan images have slipped farther away. And in their place, we have on the right, the far left, we have the emperor on the right taking a globe from a personification of Constantinople, the city, as personified. And you can tell that, sorry, it's not Constantinople, it's Rome. It's Rome. You can tell Rome because she's wearing a helmet. And again, this is emphasizing military might and success on the part of his army. The next one you see is a very clear depiction of the Chi Rho. It isn't always this clear, but this design on the coins of soldiers and the standards for their legion is very common. But here, there's been this change, is that it shows the banner with the Chi Rho on it, an emulation of that story about when they fought at the Milvian Bridge. And the last image is an image of the coin that was struck for Constantine after his death. And the Roman practice is once an emperor has died, he's deified. And it's a common way of presenting the emperor making his way to wherever the afterlife is to be driving a chariot pulled by 4 horses, which is called a quadriga. But in this one, there's something else. And it's the first appearance of something that is attributable to God. It is the hand of God reaching down to guide him up into the heavens. In the time following Constantine, a couple of things. Here you see representations of 3 of the emperors that followed Constantine, and you'll note all of them facing right, wearing a diadem made out of pearls. That is the standard now. Another standard is being suggested by the large coin that you see. It doesn't become fully entrenched for a while, and this is its first appearance. And you see the emperor facing front, wearing a helmet with a crest on it and decorated with a diadem of pearls, holding in various times, it was the object that he was holding over his shoulder was either a spear or an arrow. It has been both. And this image is particularly good because it shows you the shield that he's carrying. And on the shield is an image of either the emperor or a Roman soldier on horseback You can't see the rest of this very well, but what he's doing is spearing an enemy who has fallen to the ground. And that's another common image that appeared on the coins. After Constantine, you don't see as many different kinds of reverse images as there were on typical Roman coins. In other words, it's contracting so that think of our American coins, and until we started doing various things on the back of the quarter, it was really pretty well expectable that you were only going to see one image on the back of a quarter or one image on the back of a dime. Well, these Roman coins are kind of moving toward that. Fewer designs on the reverse. And the personifications of the city of Rome and the city of Constantinople were used frequently, either together or separately. And on the large coin on the right, you see Rome on the left wearing a helmet, and Constantinople on the left, on the right, wearing what is called a mural crown. If you could see a better image of it, larger image of it, it's meant to emulate the fortification walls around a city. And then over to the left, this is a bronze coin, and it is the emperor in military clothing with a shield, and again, a banner with a Cairo on it. And the Cairo, the banner with the Cairo symbol on it is often called a labarum. You may see that word here somewhere, and now you know what it means. An important emperor that followed after Constantine, not of the same level as Constantine or Justinian, is Theodosius, because of what you see about the progress of Christianizing the empire, prohibited pagan worship in every form, abolished the pagan holidays, confiscated temple treasuries, allowed for closure and destruction of many pagan temples. That's getting really serious about it. Constantine built buildings. Theodosius set about dismantling all of the pagan infrastructure. The coins that he issued have some characteristics we've seen before. At the left is the emperor showing off his military might, standing on a captive and holding the giver of victory on a globe, holding a wreath. And he's also holding a standard with the labarum on it. So here we have the bringing together of the Christianization and the military competence and power of the Roman Empire. In the middle, you see another depiction of Constantinople wearing the mural crown. And this is an example of the two, of Roma and Constantinople being separated and occurring by themselves. And notice she's sitting on a throne, carrying a scepter, holding a globe. The last image is an image of victory. And here is where something different is really happening. You see Victory walking forward. She's holding her wreath. But what is she holding in her other hand? It's not just a globe. It's a globe with the cross on it. And a globe with a cross on it becomes a very significant Christian symbol. The emperors that followed him, we see a couple of things. Arcadius has revived this front-facing helmeted emperor that was seen a bit earlier. And that front-facing image is going to start to stick and be the main way that the emperor is depicted. The emperor following him, Theodosius, more Christian symbols. What you see is, you may not recognize him there on the left, but that is in fact the emperor in one of the strange faces that the engraver gave him. And again, we have Roma holding victory, and then something completely new. It's victory again. And this time, she's not holding a globe with a cross on it. She's holding a very large jeweled cross. And that is a melding of the Christian symbol and a pagan symbol that's still hanging around. The next one is Anastasius. And here's where we talk about the reform of the currency. And this is the currency as it existed for quite a long period of time, both the gold and the bronze. And one of the things that it accomplished was creating different denominations of the coins. You can see there are 3 sizes of gold and 4 sizes of bronze. Previously, there had been 2 sizes of bronze. And one of the problems for everyday ordinary people conducting the transactions in their lives is not having coins that were small enough to pay for what they wanted to buy. And so often they would cut larger coins into smaller pieces in order to have that. So this reform really helped them by creating these small coins, small denomination coins, in great numbers to be used by the ordinary people. Okay, the last big thing that happens is, yes, we've had victory all along with Christian symbols, but sooner or later, it's going to come to people that that's still a pagan image. And so the big change that happened, which you see here on the right, is that it's no longer female, it's male, and is now referred to as an angel. And that is almost the last image that you'll see of victory.
Well, here we are into the 6th century, the mid 500s, and one just can't get around Justinian. He was so important. A couple of things, really. The blossoming of the Byzantine culture can be really attributed to his time. It becomes distinct. It really flourishes. Art as well, construction, and the restoration partially of the Roman Empire. Well, I'll come back to that in just a minute. But it regards art. If you've ever been to Ravenna, this mosaic here, it's a wall mosaic, comes from Ravenna. Was sort of then in Italy on the Po River towards the north there on the east side. Becomes
it was the sort of the capital.
Yeah,
in
it
the
was
waning days of.
Right, and it be carried on then really as sort of the cultural capital of the West for several centuries there. If you think of Justinian, no doubt you think of the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, and here is one of the most beautiful mosaics, wall mosaics. It's been restored, uncovered from the plaster from the mosque years of the Hagia Sophia. But the Christ Pantocrator, Christ the all-powerful here, the ruler of all, right? And this actually comes a little bit later. This is just before or after the Fourth Crusade, so 12th or 13th century, but it represents the development really of that Byzantine art that flourishes with the time of Justinian. When you think of Byzantine, of course, you think of mosaics and for example, the floors are usually gold represented in the mosaics instead of the old Roman white floor backgrounds, and a number of distinctive developments. And his restoration of the empire was very important. He pushed further west, taking most of Italy back into the empire up to the Alps. And you can see Ravenna here. Mm-hmm. This was the cultural capital of the West. Much of North Africa is retained. And so it is sort of this sort of grand development within a very troubled time in many ways of a period of stability and of restoration. We also remember Justinian because of the plague, and I think that's probably apropos to the current times as well. So I wanted to mention this. In the 541, 542 was the period of the peak of Justinian's plague, and it was the black bubonic plague, Black Death, as we know, in the 1300s later. But this is really the first time it rages through Europe, probably coming from the east and through the steppe areas, but probably documented also coming up through Africa in the Lake District of Kenya, Tanzania, and then it hits Egypt. And once it gets up to Pelusium, which was the port city where the grain was shipped out, of course, rats, fleas, you think of those connections. They actually did really recognize that it entered Constantinople from one of those grain ships coming from Lower Egypt, the northern part there. The peak of the plague raged for 4 months. There's so many bodies were being thrown out every day, they just couldn't even keep up with it. And about half the city, Constantinople, half the city's population died. Much like the Black Plague of the Middle Ages, about a third to a half of the total population was taken away by the plague at that time. And it's interesting now that we can ask questions about are there other factors that contributed to this devastating plague at that time? And indeed, recent core sampling of glacial ice cores have shown that there were particular volcanic eruptions responsible for a cooling effect at that time. In 536, an Icelandic volcano erupted and produced the most temperature, the highest temperature drop, 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius, maybe almost 5 degrees, 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit on average. And from Ireland to China, all across the Eurasian landmass, we have records of a cold spell, snow in China in the summer, Ireland, the food failing, also in Italy, all across. So certainly there was this stressor factor involved, and that's not enough. In around 540 or 541, a second volcano erupted. This one has not been identified with certainty, but it was in the southern hemisphere. And it was probably 10% larger than the eruption of Tambora in 1815, which already was a magnitude greater than Krakatoa from 1883. So it was a double whammy, produced this decade of failed crops, and that's when the plague was able to take hold in a weakened population due to lack of food and perhaps other factors that promoted the spread of the rats and fleas. Devastating. Unfortunately, of course, modern science wasn't available to them, and so Justinian weathered this terrible time, and yet
went on to do many other things.
And still managed to go on, and the empire didn't fall.
Yeah. Well, here's an overview of Justinian's coins. And it's really come down to one design. As I said, it was the number of variations were shrinking and shrinking. And what you see now on the obverse, the head side is fully developed, or it not, I should say, it's becoming stylized. Portrait of the emperor. That doesn't look anything like Justinian, but that's meant to be the emperor. And he's wearing a helmet, and you can see the pearl diadem on it, and you can see a little bit of the crest on it. And for the first time, the emperor is holding the globe with a cross on top of it. On the reverse, we have that neither here nor there, victory combined with something else. Take a look at the coin on the bottom right, and if you can tilt your head a little bit, you'll see the word Victoria on the curve on the left-hand side, and then AVGG, which stands for Augustus, Victoria Augustus. So the idea of victory as being an important thing to claim on your coins is still there, even though the pagan victory isn't there anymore. The angel has supplanted. And you see that the angel is holding a globe with a cross and the kind of modification of the Christogram that I mentioned earlier. This is a staff with a cross on the top, and that cross is surmounted by the R. So it's meant to stand for both of the Greek letters. The emperor after Justinian was Tiberius II. And I think here is something that has a bearing on what we're going to see a couple of emperors from now. He's known for two things, as you can see: exhausting the state treasury, and I really mean leaving it absolutely empty by giving the money away, and spending lots of money on festivals and construction projects. So this is going to have an effect on the next emperors. It's going to create problems for them. His coins have an addition to them. Again, the emperor facing front, everything we've been used to seeing, but it's not a helmet, it's a crown. And this time the crown has a cross on it. And his coins feature the cross instead of any images of victory or anything else. This is an idea that didn't catch quite yet. I'm going to skip this one and go to Heraclius and say that if I don't get to the coins, it's Heraclius that puts the cross on his coins. And that's the image that stays on coins for pretty much the rest of the Byzantine Empire.
Heraclius might have been remembered as a great emperor. In some ways he was. But for what we come to at the end of near the end of his reign, he came onto the throne, actually putting off a usurper, but in a very difficult time when the Persians, the Sasanian Persians, were expanding into Byzantine territory, and responsible for a really long battle, 25 plus years against them, continuing what had been decades of struggle previous to that. He is credited with returning the true cross. This is a very important relic in the medieval mindset, and then was the emperor when the Islamic expansion took place. So I want to talk about these very briefly, but the Persians, under the Sasanians, had pushed well into Byzantine lands and taking the region of Antioch and Jerusalem in 614. I mean, they conquered Jerusalem. This is known by every archaeologist because all but one church, every church in the Holy Land was destroyed except for the one in Bethlehem, which later was mentioned that the Persians saw pictures of the wise men, the Magi, on the walls there, and thought, well, they're in Persian garb, right? Yeah, somehow that must be related to us, so we'll leave that church. But otherwise, everything was destroyed. And they pushed down into Egypt and took most of that. And so Heraclius had quite a process, and the stories of this are interesting, but we won't go there, except that the Persians came all the way to Constantinople and besieged it. It got that far west. He pushed them all the way back. And yet about 5 years or so later, the Islamic expansions began. Yes, he did, in the end of the Persian Wars, did return the True Cross relic to Jerusalem. Also the Holy Sponge, believe it or not. So, the sponge Jesus was given vinegar on. Oh, and I think the sword of piercing too. Anyway, so in the medieval mindset, these were very important things. Yes, he did attempt to stop the Rashidun, the Islamic armies of the early 600s. In 632, Muhammad died, and Abu Bakr, after he put down a revolt, pushed into Iraq, then up into Syria, and it was at the Battle of Yarmouk, pictured here, that final loss of Syria and Palestine took place. And you can see here the diagrams. It was a 6-day war. Not much had happened, a lot of back and forth, but the Islamic armies had a very able general, Walid al-Walid. And on the 6th day, he outflanked on the left here the Byzantine army. During the night, he had taken the bridge that goes across this extension of the Yarmouk watershed. And the Byzantines were trapped, and as they tried to flee, they were tumbling into the deep crevasses and heavy armor, of course, drowning and so forth. And it was an utter rout. Back in Antioch, Heraclius recognized defeat. He went to the church to hold a prayer vigil. And then during the night, he took off by boat to Constantinople, saying farewell, long farewell to Syria, my fair province. And that was the end of Byzantine control of the Levant of Syria and Palestine.
Okay. Can I'm going to take, yeah.
That's just the map
that's
of what
like.
ended up around
all that
750.
green space.
Yep.
Okay, two quick things. Coins of Heraclius. You can see on the left, he included his children on his coins, on the reverse of his coins. On some, the child on the left is smaller because he was younger. But there are a lot of his coins that have all three of them. Over on the right, you see the cross on steps. That is what became the reverse of Byzantine coins. May have been modified or added to now and then, but from here on, that's pretty much what it looked like. Now, you remember that green space on that map, and that's the area that the Muslims conquered. And one of the interesting things to me is what happens to all the people that have been living their lives and minding their own business and what have you, and now there's a new ruler. Well, that new ruler allowed them to continue using the coins of Heraclius. There you see him with his two sons and with the cross on the steps. And over time, this is what happened. On the middle, you see that the crosses were eliminated. It still pretty much looked like that coin, but there weren't any crosses there. And then eventually, the crosses were gone altogether, and we had a column. And so that is a whole about 70 years of coins under the Muslims. Then finally, they made their own coins that had their own symbols on them. And I think we're done.
Thank you so much, Kent and Terry. Really fascinating. In fact, we are going to open up for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, feel free to post your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function. If you're not familiar with where that is, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little smiley face that says reactions. And if you click that, there is a raise hand button. And if you raise your hand, we will have you unmute and share your question. And I just want to take a moment to thank our viewers who joined us on Facebook as well. We were live on Facebook, or are live on Facebook. And so thank you everyone for joining us on Zoom and everyone for joining us on Facebook. We do have a question from Bill Ellinger that says, are all of the coins shown in the CNEA collection?
Say that again? Are they all what?
He's wondering if all of the coins that you showed were part of the CNEA collection.
No, they're not. And if we could possibly go back to this page, this is the photo credits for all of the coins that were used in the talk. We've highlighted the ones that come from the CNEA collection, but we don't have a, okay, we're gonna try and get it up for you.
Okay, there you go.
There you go, there it is. Got them from quite a lot of website sites on the internet that feature ancient coins. They're fascinating and they're very helpful to learn from, as I did when I was learning how to catalog the coins. As I say, not every one of them came from the collection, unfortunately.
Thank you, Terry. No other questions at this time. If you want to go ahead and share something else. Oh, I think Gary Huffaker has a question.
I do. I'm just learning how to use this. So I find myself, as I see that presentation, thinking of the globe as the Earth. And quite obviously, that is not a correct assumption. What did the original, purveyors of these coins have in mind when they used the globe as a symbol?
It was the Earth. It was the
Well,
world.
is that right?
It was a symbol of the
Before,
world.
oh, okay.
Remember that the Greeks knew that the world was round.
Right. The medieval flat Earth is really a misconception, probably, of most of the Middle Ages. There may have been some that thought that, but the educated folks knew it was, well, at least that it was a disc, and then at many times in history they knew it was a sphere as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
We've got another question here from Bill Ellinger, who is wondering, where were the coins minted, and are there mint marks?
Oh yes, there are mint marks. I don't know whether we can get back to one of them or not. There were Roman mints all over the place. It's just amazing to me. And some of them were much bigger and had much more volume than others, but they were just all over the place. And the big ones in the era just before the Muslims came in were in Antioch and Damascus, as well as in Constantinople. Quite a lot of coins were made in Constantinople. And if you, we can see it on this one. Look at the top one and the middle one, and you see the letters CONOB. CON stands for Constantinople. OB stands for the quality of the gold, highest quality in the coin. I also found out in identifying one particular intriguing coin that there were mints in other places, North Africa and Anatolia and around and about, that minted coins, but they didn't put their own place name on it. They put CONOB on it. So you really find quite a lot of coins now that look like they came from Constantinople, but maybe they didn't. You have to tell by the designs.
Perfect. And one more question to follow up with that. Where were the metals mined?
Oh, golly.
Well, the copper, a lot of copper came from Cyprus.
Yeah,
silver from Spain, had a lot of silver, but there were silver mines, really.
There weren't
Greece and other
there
places.
weren't many Byzantine silver coins because they didn't have access
Once they lost
to the silver. We know that the Athenians did a lot of silver Athenian coins because they had silver mines. So the copper was mixed with tin. The source of tin in the ancient world is the subject of a lot of discussion and research, and we're not sure.
The Romans got some of it from Cornwall in England. That's one of the incentives to go there. But
it's believed
some came from Afghanistan, probably.
Right, Afghanistan, and mines that are no longer producing in Anatolia.
Yeah, at least some. That's been more controversial, but it seems to be proven
and
more
the gold,
recently.
there are many sources of gold. The very first coins in the West were made out of coin that occurred naturally in a river in the then state of Lydia. You just pick it up on the riverbed.
Mm-hmm. Like California.
Yeah, for a while.
Okay, we've got a question from Larry Garrity. Go ahead and unmute.
This is a follow-up to Gary's question about the flat Earth and the orb of the Earth. When did that transition take place?
When did it become flat again, you mean?
Well, no, earlier on. I mean, we presume it was flat from Near Eastern sources, right? And from the Bible and so on. When did they first recognize it as a globe?
Rather than the flat disk.
Right.
Aristarchus and other Greeks were able to, even before Ptolemy, Aristarchus was able to triangulate and realize there was a curvature to the surface of the Earth.
Figure out the
and
diameter,
figured out the diameter. But probably earlier navigators realized the ship goes over goes out of view as it goes further on the sea, and that's due to the curvature of the Earth curving away. So I'm not sure when the earliest of the Greeks realized that, but it does seem to have been part of that Greek rationalist understanding of nature that began, with the Ionian Enlightenment period. So following 600, 500 BC.
Thank you.
All right. Vivian was wondering regarding the globe. Didn't Queen Elizabeth hold a globe and a cross in her hands for her royal paintings? Was there any connections there?
Well, the idea of like the standards and stuff. I mean, don't old British coins have, like from 1900? Don't they? They look very Roman in many ways. The trident and all sorts of imagery has continued on through. So I wouldn't doubt that the orb and the scepter, some of those things connect.
The orb being sort of a symbol of royalty, and the cross melding Christianity with it. And I think they must have picked it up from the Byzantine because it was such a powerful symbol. And of course, the Catholic Church has continued using that symbol. Britain used to be Catholic before it had its Reformation, and so it's a symbol that has just lasted.
We were wondering, were the inscriptions always in Latin, or were there other languages?
Oh, thank you. They were Latin and they were Latin in the East up until, and I am forgetting which emperor it was, but and it may have been Heraclius, who, and I think it was under Heraclius. The language on the coins became Greek. And of course, the language on the coins under Alexander and the empires that succeeded him were in Greek back in the BC years. So once again, as we get into what century were we in? Seventh?
Yeah, 7th century to 600s. Mm-hmm.
It becomes Greek again on the coins. He changes the title for himself as emperor from the Latin imperator to the Greek basileus, taking on, and that's where that kind of Greek and Oriental character of the Eastern Empire started to change.
Let me introduce something here. I think Don, if we could get the microphone. Thank you, sorry about that. But Don has a presentation to make. But I wonder, Kent and Terry, if you could show the RTI image of the coin, because of the technology we now have, we can actually get a much closer look at these coins.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll say as a preface to Kent that taking a good picture of a gold coin is not a very easy thing to do because they are so bright and shiny. And so we now have some technology that helps a great deal with being able to read the surface and what all is in the design that's there.
Yes, and especially with artifacts that we don't keep in country. If we find something in an archaeological expedition now, it stays in the country, belongs to the country of origin. What you do when you study a small artifact, you usually hold it up and angle it in different ways with the light, don't you, to see all the detail. So an RTI, it's comes from the words reflectance transformation imaging, is a way of producing a picture in which you can move the light source from side to side and look at it from different directions. Obviously, we use many pictures, 30 to 40 pictures, in a dark room with a light source from different directions that are then integrated into this product. So look up here in the top right, you can see this circle and there's a light spot. I can drag that with my cursor around, and that represents where the light source is shining from now on the artifact. So here I have the light source as if I'm shining from the top right. And that actually shows up Heraclius here in the middle very nicely with his two sons. By the way, those must have been a couple of his good sons. He had married his niece, and it was considered incest, and he had about 6 deformed, congenital deformations, children, maybe three more that seemed to be okay. But anyway, many people considered it God's punishment for his sin of marrying his niece, and he did too. And when he lost the provinces of Syria to the Islamic armies, he felt that that was God's punishment. Any rate, yeah, there he is with his two sons, the little one on the left. And I can move the light source here from the left. That's a pretty good contrast, shows the highlights very nicely. Any rate, an RTI then is one of the tools that we can use in archaeology to study these kinds of artifacts, inscriptions that are impressed in clay or coins, those kinds of objects.
All right, thank you so much, Terry and Kent, for your presentation again. It was really fascinating. We'll have to have more parts in the future, I think. So we're very fortunate to have some of these fine examples among our collection. So thank you for sharing some of those with our audience here. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Dawn Acevedo. I'm the curatorial assistant at the Center for Near Eastern Archaeology. And Doug has asked me to share with you all today a bit about recent updates and initiatives that have been going on here at CNEA. It's been a while since we all got to meet together. And so we want to share with you guys some of what's been going on over the last year, and especially more recently. So over the past year, COVID-19 revealed to us the importance of increasing our web presence and the availability of archaeological information and education to our online community. In order to accomplish this, CNEA decided to launch more social media accounts. So we launched an Instagram account, a Twitter account, we started a YouTube channel, and we've made several updates to our pre-existing Facebook profile, as well as our website. So if you want to connect with us on any of those platforms, you can find the links here. I also posted them in the chat room. I apologize that those were not hyperlinked. I couldn't figure out how to get them to be hyperlinked. But you can copy and paste those addresses and follow them in your browser. We do share several of our CNEA related activities and events on these platforms. We've shared about our personnel, including Terry and Kent, both, who are part of the CNEA family. And we share news and updates about our affiliates on Facebook and on Twitter, archaeological news updates on Twitter as well. And on our YouTube, you'll be able to find recordings from the Loma Linda had produced the Excavating the Bible series. You can find all of those videos on our YouTube channel, or on our website linked to their YouTube channel. You can also find videos that we've produced for CNEA, including a little bit of I like to call it a trailer that tells you a bit about what CNEA looks like, what it's about. We also have recordings from our 2020 Archaeology Discovery Weekend, which includes a coin presentation from Terry on different coin subject material. So be sure to go and watch that if you missed it in November. As for our website, recent updates include we've revised and expanded the projects and excavations page, which features information on the Mataba Regional Archaeological Museum, Khirbet Ataruz, the Balua Regional Archaeological Project, Tal el-Umeri, as well as the Garrity Endowment through the American Society of Overseas Research. So you can find updated information on all of those there. Just a quick note while we're talking about projects, I wanted to let you all know that because of COVID-19, the Ataruz project will only be conducting a short study season with limited personnel. And I believe that is closed, so they're not accepting any additional personnel at this time. And the Balua excavation has been postponed until 2022. We will be hosting a 2-week intensive course for students on campus who need to get those credits, get their field school experience in order to graduate. But unfortunately, we have had to postpone the Balua excavation until next year. We also have revised our galleries section. You see there on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So we've taken our videos, our 3D tours and virtual tours and 3D artifacts, there we go, as well as our photos from previous study tours. And we've combined all of those onto the galleries page. And again, under that videos tab is where you will be able to find episodes of LLBN's Excavating the Bible program, as well as links to all of the videos I mentioned that are on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. And be sure to check back frequently with this as we're adding videos. Today's lecture will be appearing there shortly as well. And speaking of new and updated content, you can find the most up-to-date information on Archaeology Discovery Weekend 2021 on our website. You'll notice that we've updated the poster and a full program will be coming soon, as well as the registration link will be opened soon as well. Toward the bottom of the page, what you see there on the bottom right, you'll be able to see links for the digital copies of the programs for each of the events from our inception, 2009, all the way up to 2020, as well as another link to those videos if you would like to watch or rewatch the videos from the 2020 program. Recently, we've had some donations to CNEA, the most notable of which include an archaeological slide collection and archaeology and art history library of the late Norma Kershaw. Both of these collections have provided valuable teaching and researching resources, which we're really excited to make available to our faculty and staff and students once campus reopens. There on the left, you'll see Doug standing next to 39 boxes packed full of books that we received from Norma Kershaw and her daughters. And on the upper right, you see me examining some of the slides that we received from her as well. And so we just can't wait for campus to be reopened so we can share these with people who will find them very valuable. I do hope that many of you were able to watch the presentation that took place earlier this afternoon for the World Museum of Natural History. If not, there might be a recording available. I'm not sure, but there was talk of possibly recording that. And during that, they did talk about updates for the La Sierra University Museum and Visitor Center. So I'm just going to briefly touch on that. In 2020, the museum board received architectural renderings of the Museum and Visitor Center. So on the bottom left, that's what you see there is an architectural rendering of what the museum might end up looking like, 3 stories tall, with an auditorium space and of course our lab spaces and offices, display areas, storage for our archaeological collections, all sorts of stuff. And that will be housing, again, the World Museum of Natural History, the ethnographic collections from the Stahl Center, and of course, the archaeological collections from here at the Center for Near Eastern Archaeology. In preparation for the move to and use of the museum spaces, La Sierra has decided to utilize a relational database called Argus, which is powered by a company called Lucidia. Now, Lucidia specializes in databases for museums, libraries, archives, and other digital resource management organizations. So while the university entered into contract with Lucidia back in the fall, the past few months have been very busy as we have been taking tremendous strides at CNEA and the Natural History Museum to prepare our collections data and photos for transfer and incorporation into that database. The museum collections assistant, Lindy Montez, who, if you saw the earlier presentation, you would have seen her then. She is working with the World Museum of Natural History, and she's been hard at work creating a collections management policy, along with help from CNEA staff contributing some, that will help to govern the storage, data collection, display, and access to various museum collections as well. And so what you see on the upper right there is kind of a little bit of a preview of what you might see whenever we have our data uploaded, which will include photos and as well as other information that we have collected on all of our artifacts here at CNEA. Finally, these initiatives and projects are only possible because of your help. And so many of you have supported us throughout the years, and we are so thankful. And it's only through your help and your generosity that we're able to continue the research, the outreach, the conservation, and the field work that we've been doing for the past 9 years. So with your help, we can continue to care and display our art, care for and display our art artifacts for the benefit of the students, for the local community, and more recently for our online community. And with your help, we are able to host events such as this one, and such as our annual Archaeology Discovery Weekend in the fall. And we're able to continue our fieldwork in Jordan, in the biblical regions of Ammon and Moab, and we get to give a future to the past. So if you're able, please consider giving to support the CNEA. If you'd like to partner with us or continue partnering with us, of course, you can give online at lasierra.edu/donate. You could text CNEA to 41444, or you can mail a check to CNEA at La Sierra University, 4500 Riverwalk Parkway in Riverside, California, 92505. And as a special added bonus for this homecoming weekend, in honor of our lecture from Terry Shaw and Kent Bramlett, we will be sending a set of CNEA's Coins of the Bible to anyone who donates $100 or more this weekend. You'll receive these special collectible replicas, which include a Tyrion's shekel, a denarius, and a widow's mite. Terry might be able to tell us more about each of those. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our homecoming lecture, for hearing about our recent initiatives and updates. And now Dr. Clark will be presenting our archaeological awards.
Thank you, Don, for that update. There are so many things happening, and we just appreciate the contributions, the support that we have from a number of people on this screen. I also want to thank Terry and Kent for just a wonderful presentation with the historical context and the background. My applause emoji kind of ran out of energy, but it was there momentarily, but we appreciate that. And Don, thank you. But I also want to say that we've come to really an important part of what we do every year, and that is to recognize people who have made major contributions in different sorts of ways to our center, to our work here, to our work in the Middle East, but especially to what we're doing here. So let me find a PowerPoint, just one moment. Oops, it's not going to do this, just a second. Okay. Now we will share. A couple of little glitches, I think, with Zoom that it would be nice to make some comments about, but you know, it's such a great platform to use that we're happy to make use of it, especially in this kind of context. So what I would like to do is give just a minute. Nope, I did something bad there. Give me just a minute. I'll come back. Ho ho, that was a very bad thing to do. Undo. I will come up here and undo it. There we go. Okay, those buttons are too close to each other. Okay, so we can see we're okay. What I want to do is now make some awards to some of our really important people at CNEA. These are people who have made long-term contributions, either in time or in contributions to support the ongoing work of the center, or multiple different sorts of ways. 2019, it was these three. These are the first three recipients of CNEA Archaeology Awards. Doctors Wisby, Schaefer, and Garrity. and we thank them for their contributions. This time, we actually had planned to give 3 more awards at the 2020 meeting of Homecoming, but that didn't happen, so we're doing it in 2021. And first of all, Suha and Gary Huffaker, who have so long been a part of our archaeological thinking and social life and research. Suha and Gary and their family, and I've got a few photos of them in situ, in their workplace in Jordan at our Tel El Ameri excavations. Suha here in 2008, the objects registrar. Suha and Gary brought their 3 children in 1998. Then 10 years later, in 2008, they brought them all back again. So we had 5 Huffakers on our dig, 2 different seasons. Suha here on campus as the Bedouin tent hostess. Gary as a Bedouin tent host. I think that's T or something like that Gary is working with. Here are the here's the Huffaker family on site in 2008. So you see Gary and Suha kind of bookending them, and then Eric, Stephen, and Danielle. Gary at work, excavating and measuring, and in one case being exiled to the SIFT. This actually happened all the time, and they traded people that they decided to exile to the SIFT. It looks a long ways away, but it really isn't. Gary was really good at that, had a good eye. And then Suha, this may be somebody that you know, maybe a relative, I don't know, but it was a picture taken a long time ago when we first started doing these archaeology programs on campus. So that's Suha and Gary. I'm going to come back to them in just a minute because we'll take a minute for them if they would like to make some comments. That would be great. And the other one is Vera Kopecki, who is our longtime artifact photographer, dating from before there was CNEA, before we moved to this facility. As you'll see in this picture, which is over in Palmer Hall, another part of campus, where we originally had our artifacts stored and were curating them. But then we moved this way. It's a great picture of Vera capturing this artifact. And then lots of photos that, I mean, thousands of photos now. And so she decided to make Kopecki's crafts, photo cards. These come from our display case in our office. I'm sure she'll be happy to send some others. Let me see, something's happening. Aha, why am I not able to move? I think something happened. Excuse me, just a minute. I think I'm gonna have to stop sharing. I'll try this again. Sorry about that. It just froze on me. Not sure why. Now let's see if it functions. No, it's frozen. Oh. Oh, I'm so sorry about this because it has some more photos of, well, okay, so I can't get that going. Let's not worry about it. Let us, though, take a minute and hear from Suha and Gary, and then from our fine photographer, Vera.
Hello, friends. It's nice to be here with you, and I am very honored to be an awardee of this to be recognized. And really, it's been just a pleasure, and I don't really, feel we deserve an award, particularly because we're doing something we really enjoy, which is to be involved in various ways with the CNEA. Particularly going on digs was very, very life-changing for our children who at the time were, the time that we went, it was a very formative time of their life. And being from the Middle East myself, it was especially important that we got to travel and see that part of the world, and also be part of a team that really respects the past and the setting in Jordan and the places that they go to study the past and the people and culture. So like I said, it's really been such a positive experience, and I really, in a variety of ways, we tried to support what goes on, but it's really quite minor compared to all the hard work that you're hearing about. And I'm just really excited to hear all the stuff that Don was talking about. I just want to, applaud you all and just, say good job for all of that.
I will just add a couple of words. I think we have gotten a lot more from archaeology than archaeology has gotten from us, and that includes a lot of things. Many of them things that Sue has already mentioned. When I first went, I didn't think I could take that much time off, and I took 6 weeks off in 1998 to go on the dig. And when I came back to work, rather than being treated as an outcast for my time away, I was treated somewhat as a hero for having participated in this project. So again, it just underlines the fact that we have gotten so much from this field and from you people. I think you people are my kind of people. I really like being with you and spending time with you. And so I think it's been, certainly, we should be giving you the award rather than the other way around.
That's very thoughtful, but I actually had a slide of pictures of the award, and here it is. You can't really read it because it is transparent.
Wow.
But it is there, and it does say, in recognition for years of faithful participation in and support for the archaeology program at La Sierra University, the Center for Near Eastern Archaeology proudly honors you with this achievement award. And it's dated April 17, which is correct, 2020, which, okay, you may need to etch something else on here. Okay.
No ophthalmologist would try to improve on that.
Thank you very much for your words. Vera, where is Vera?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Please, Vera.
Hello, everyone. I really thank very much for this recognition. I feel same like Gary and Suha. I get much more from working in our center than I am giving. It's all started when I was planning to retire. My daughter suggested that I go on a trip to Peru with Dr. Steele, Anders, Jones, and Smith. When that went well, with information overload that my brain sometimes didn't really could take it, so I retired. And she encouraged me to go to Jordan to take a part in dig, since she was on a dig in 1994. And so I always been interested in archaeology. And this gave me also time in my retirement that I can volunteer in archaeology lab in La Sierra University. And there I met Adri. She graciously shared her knowledge and skill. And so in no time, I was able to weigh, measure, handle, and admire, of course, all the objects several 100,000-year-old. Once you do that, once you handle them and you see them and you just, you just hook for the life. And that's my case. I think till I can drive from Torrance to Riverside, I will religiously come, okay? And all this led to helping move to lab to the new location, what is now fantastic compared what we have before, and my weekly volunteering in CNEA, and also participating in a DIX in 2010, 12, 14, 17, and 19. I learned a lot, and I am grateful for opportunity to be part of this great archaeology group. And I am really grateful for all of you to let me, become the part of this group. Thank you again.
You bet. Thank you, Vera. We cannot imagine ourselves doing our work without you or without Gary and Suha. Who've made such important contributions to our attitudes too. I mean, you've listened to these people who are optimistic, they're upbeat, they're energetic. And I think if I'm correct, Suha and Gary are in the middle of moving. So thank you especially for taking time to do this. Vera, your award looks just like theirs, but it has your name on it. So I won't pull it up here to show it, but in any case, thank you both. I also want to thank the presenters again, Terry and Kent. I want to thank Dawn for her help. Christian Liang has been very helpful from IT on campus. I want to thank all of our colleagues as I'm looking at your faces for being part of this meeting this afternoon. And I wish you well. Please stay safe. Please keep your distance. And while we are not wearing our masks while we are making these presentations, we'll have them on soon. So be sure to help everybody, including yourself and your neighbors, by following these guidelines. Thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon. Bye for now.